Max Verstappen may be about to receive the one upgrade that changes Red Bull's entire season before Spa. Because the RB22 is not simply searching for more speed. It is fighting an overweight car problem, a vital upgrade delay, and a performance ceiling that may be hiding one of Red Bull's biggest advantages. And that advantage could be power. Reports have pointed to a surprising internal combustion engine strength inside Red Bull's new package. But extra power means far less when unnecessary weight damages acceleration, braking, tire life, and every direction change across a lap. That is why this update matters. Spa is more than 7 kilometers of long flat-out sections, violent elevation changes, high-speed corners, and almost no room for weakness. Extra weight is punished everywhere. Efficiency is rewarded everywhere. So if Red Bull can reduce the burden holding the RB22 back, while finally unlocking its possible engine advantage, Verstappen will not simply receive a faster car. He could receive a weapon built perfectly for Spa. And the most important part of this story is not how much performance Red Bull is adding. It is how much performance has already been trapped inside the car, waiting to be released. To understand why this update could change everything for Verstappen, you have to start with the problem Red Bull cannot afford to carry into Spa. The RB22 has been linked with an overweight car problem. And in Formula 1, extra weight does not stay in one area. It follows the car everywhere. Under acceleration. Under braking. Through direction changes. Across tire wear. Over a qualifying lap. Across an entire race distance. That is what makes the problem so damaging. A Formula 1 car can have strong aerodynamics, impressive power, and a driver capable of extracting more than almost anyone else. But if the car is carrying more weight than the team wants, every part of that performance becomes harder to use. Imagine running with a heavy backpack. You may still be fast. You may still be strong. But every step costs more energy. You accelerate more slowly. You stop less sharply. You change direction with less freedom. And over time, the extra effort begins to affect everything else. That is the situation Red Bull may be trying to escape. Because the most dangerous part of an overweight car is not always the obvious loss on the stopwatch. It is the chain reaction. More weight increases the energy the tires have to control. That can affect temperature. It can affect wear. It can affect how confidently the driver attacks braking zones. It can affect how quickly the car rotates through slower corners. And at Spa, those small losses can spread across an entire lap. The circuit does not allow the car to hide. The long straights expose acceleration. The fast corners expose stability. The elevation changes expose how well the car controls its movement. The heavy braking zones expose how much confidence the driver has when the car is loaded. And the long lap gives every weakness more time to become visible. That is why Red Bull's update may be more important than one dramatic aerodynamic gain. If the team can reduce weight, improve packaging, or free the car from some of the compromises created by that problem, the result could feel bigger than the change itself. Because removing unnecessary weight does not only help one section. It helps the whole car respond. The car can accelerate more cleanly. It can brake with less resistance. It can change direction with more precision. The tires may be asked to do less work. And the driver may begin to feel a machine that is more willing to react. That matters enormously for Verstappen. He does not need a car that feels gentle. He needs a car that responds. A car that gives him the front-end reaction he expects. A car that remains stable enough at the rear for him to commit. A car that lets him attack the limit without constantly waiting for the balance to catch up. And this is where the update begins to look like more than a weight-saving exercise. Because the source also points toward a vital upgrade being planned, while discussion continues around a possible internal combustion engine advantage for Red Bull. Those two ideas are deeply connected. Power is only valuable when the chassis can use it. A strong engine can create more acceleration. But extra weight fights that acceleration. A strong engine can help the car reach higher speed. But a difficult balance may prevent the driver from carrying enough momentum out of the previous corner. A strong engine can be a weapon on the straights. But if the rear tires are working too hard, the driver may not be able to apply that power as early as needed. This is why the update could unlock more than it adds. And that distinction is critical. Red Bull may not need to create a completely new strength. It may need to release the strength already inside the RB22. Think of a door being held shut by a heavy object. The power to open it is already there. The problem is the resistance. Remove the resistance, and suddenly the same force creates a completely different result. That may be what Verstappen is waiting for. Not a miracle. Not one impossible leap. A car that stops wasting its own potential. And if Red Bull has been carrying a genuine internal combustion engine advantage, reducing the burden around it becomes even more important. Because Spa rewards efficient power delivery. The long flat-out sections punish hesitation. The corners before those straights punish poor traction. And the entire lap punishes a car that cannot connect its strengths. That connection is the real secret weapon. Braking confidence leads to a cleaner entry. A cleaner entry leads to better rotation. Better rotation allows earlier throttle. Earlier throttle improves the exit. A stronger exit makes the engine advantage more valuable. And suddenly, one update changes the entire sequence. That is what rivals fear. Not one isolated improvement. A complete lap beginning to work together. But there is another reason this matters. An overweight car can also make setup decisions more painful. When the engineers are already fighting excess weight, every compromise becomes tighter. The team may have less freedom over ballast placement. Less freedom over how the car balances front to rear. Less freedom to chase performance without creating another weakness. And when the setup window becomes too narrow, the car can feel brilliant in one condition and difficult in another. That is dangerous at Spa. The weather can change. The wind can shift. Track temperature can move. One part of the circuit can feel completely different from another. A car with a narrow working range can fall away quickly. A car with more freedom can adapt. And adaptation may be just as important as outright speed. Because the fastest setup on Friday may not be the right setup for qualifying. The qualifying setup may not be ideal for the race. The race may begin in one condition and finish in another. Red Bull needs a car that can survive those changes without losing its identity. That is why the update may need to deliver more than weight reduction. It may need to widen the operating window. Make the RB22 easier to understand. Easier to balance. Easier to trust. That would give Verstappen something more valuable than comfort. It would give him confidence before the corner. And that is where performance becomes psychological. When a driver knows what the car will do, commitment becomes natural. The braking point moves later. The steering becomes cleaner. The throttle arrives earlier. The corrections become smaller. The tires slide less. And the car begins to look faster without appearing more dramatic. That is the kind of gain that can be missed in one photograph. But it becomes impossible to ignore across a race distance. And this is where the timing matters. Red Bull is not introducing this story at a harmless circuit. Spa is a pressure test. It will expose whether the weight problem has really been reduced. It will expose whether the car accelerates more freely. It will expose whether Verstappen can carry more confidence through high-speed sections. It will expose whether the possible engine strength is real enough to matter. And most importantly, it will expose whether the update works in more than one condition. Fresh tires can hide weakness. Low fuel can make a car feel sharper. Clean air can make the balance easier. The real test comes later. Heavy fuel, worn tires, traffic, changing wind, a driver forced away from the perfect line. That is when Red Bull will discover whether the update has genuinely changed the RB22. Because if the car only becomes faster for one lap, the problem is not solved. But if it becomes lighter in response, more stable under pressure, and more capable of using its power through every phase of the lap, then Verstappen may finally have the weapon he needs. And the most dangerous part is still ahead. Because reducing weight and unlocking power may improve the car alone. But Spa will ask a harder question. Can the RB22 still deliver that performance when Verstappen is trapped behind another car, losing clean airflow, overheating the tires, and fighting for position? That is where the update either becomes a true secret weapon, or reveals that Red Bull still has one weakness left to solve. Traffic is where the RB22 update faces its most revealing test. In clean air, the car receives the airflow its engineers intended. The front responds more clearly. The rear is easier to understand. The driver can use the ideal line and build confidence one corner at a time. But when Verstappen closes on another car, that clean environment disappears. The air becomes disturbed. The front can lose grip. The balance can shift. And the tires may begin working harder before the attack has even started. That matters at every circuit. At Spa, it can decide the entire race. The lap contains long sections where a driver must stay close through demanding corners before reaching the best overtaking opportunity. Lose too much ground in those corners, and straight-line speed becomes almost irrelevant. The engine may be powerful. The car may be efficient. But the attack is already over. This is why Red Bull's update cannot be judged by maximum speed alone. The car must help Verstappen arrive at the straight close enough to use that speed. And that begins much earlier than most people realize. It begins under braking. It begins at corner entry. It begins when the front tires are asked to turn while following turbulent air. If the front loses grip, Verstappen has to reduce his speed. If he carries less speed, the car rotates later. If it rotates later, he returns to the throttle later. And if the throttle arrives late, the possible engine advantage cannot deliver its full value. One weakness can cancel the next strength. That is the chain Red Bull needs to break. A lighter, more responsive RB22 could make that process easier. Less unnecessary mass may help the car react more quickly. It may reduce the amount of energy the tires must control. It may make direction changes feel more immediate. But weight alone is not the complete answer. The car also needs stability. Because a machine that changes direction quickly but behaves unpredictably can become even harder to trust. Verstappen needs both. Response at the front, control at the rear. That combination allows him to place the car exactly where the battle demands. And battles rarely happen on the ideal line. When attacking, he may need to move onto a different part of the track. When defending, he may need to brake from a tighter angle. When following closely, he may need to correct the car as the airflow changes from one moment to the next. Every adjustment places more demand on the tires. Every correction creates heat. And once the tires move outside their best range, the car can begin losing performance rapidly. That is why tolerance may be the most valuable thing Red Bull can add. Not simply more grip, more tolerance. A car that remains understandable when the wind changes. A car that still responds when the tires are older. A car that does not fall apart when Verstappen leaves the perfect racing line. A car that gives him more than one way to attack. That would change the entire nature of the RB22. Because a fast car is dangerous when everything goes according to plan. A tolerant car remains dangerous when the plan collapses. And Spa has a habit of destroying plans. The weather can change quickly. A safety car can erase a gap. Traffic can appear at the worst moment. A pit stop can release a driver behind a slower group. Suddenly, the car must operate in conditions the engineers did not choose. That is where Red Bull's update could create its biggest advantage. Not through one spectacular lap. Through freedom. Freedom to stay out longer. Freedom to attack on worn tires. Freedom to change strategy without fearing that the car will become impossible to control. Freedom for Verstappen to create an opportunity rather than wait for one. That is the difference between reacting to a race and controlling it. And tire behavior sits at the center of that difference. An overweight car can place additional demand on the tires. The tires must carry more energy under braking. They must support more load through corners. They must work harder every time the car accelerates and changes direction. Across one lap, the effect may look small. Across an entire stint, it can become decisive. The first few laps may appear competitive. Then the front begins to slide. The rear loses traction. The driver makes more corrections. The temperatures rise. And the performance begins falling away. The cruel part is what happens next. The natural response is to push harder. But pushing harder can create more sliding. More sliding creates more heat. More heat reduces grip. And the driver becomes trapped in a cycle that becomes increasingly difficult to escape. This is where Verstappen's skill can hide a problem. He may correct the car faster. He may adapt his line. He may protect the tires better than another driver. But even the best driver cannot remove the laws of physics. If the car is asking too much from the tires, the performance will eventually suffer. That is why the update could matter more over 20 laps than over one. A lighter car may ask less from the tires. A more stable platform may reduce sliding. A wider operating window may allow the car to remain competitive as conditions change. And if those gains arrive together, Red Bull can begin using strategy in a completely different way. Imagine two drivers approaching the same stint. One car is fast, but its tires begin fading quickly. The other is only slightly faster at first, but remains consistent. After several laps, the second car becomes much more dangerous. It can attack later. It can extend the stint. It can force the rival to pit first. That is how small technical improvements become large strategic advantages. And this is why the word update does not tell the full story. The real value is not the new part itself. The real value is what that part allows Red Bull to do. Can Verstappen stay close without overheating the front tires? Can he apply power earlier without spinning the rear? Can he maintain performance when fuel burns away and the car becomes lighter? Can he defend without destroying the next corner? Can Red Bull delay a pit stop without losing control of the race?